up, YouTube? Topaz Yates back for another requested review, and this one is to that Tim Shepard, Son of Sam. And for those of you who are OGs to this channel, Tim Shepard is the Dreadful Controversy, who I've done videos and such with before in the past, as he finally pieced together this album and put it out there because it's been like a long time in the making. Now, the first thing I want to talk about is the change of name. Even though you have been going by that for quite some time and all that, it still is different from the name that you had from a while ago. And you know, I've always been opposed to that because for the most part, people tend to lose you when you change your name or change your channels and change all over the place, man. People usually know you for one thing and try to come back to see if you got anything from that one thing. But yet, there are instances where it makes sense to go ahead and do that. What you're ultimately doing here is like a rebirth of your whole MC game because you have progressed a whole lot from where you was before in the past. You can obviously see the improvement in your delivery, your flow, and the lyricism in which you are applying here because you're giving some quality punchlines, but yet the way that you're going about it, we're going to talk more about that a little later. So when you drastically improve, a lot of times you really don't want to stand by a lot of stuff you did before, man. Where that ultimately just comes off as practice getting you to where you are at right now. So I'm not mad about the switch up, but in the end you got to realize you still aren't on that elite level though, man, because if you're going to compare yourself to anybody, man, compare yourself to the best. A lot of people will look at you like, yeah, man, you rapping better than most of these rappers out there right now, Lil Yachty and Young Thug, Kodak Black, all of these people, man. But yet, you cannot draw comparison to these people because they're just not in your lane. You are obviously striving to be the best, so therefore, you need to be compared to the best. And you need to create a product that's comparative to what the best are out there kicking out. So in that context, you realize that you still got a lot of work to go. Like, you got your core fundamentals, you got the understanding on where you're trying to go with your skills and all that, but yet you don't have the polish to it yet. Your rhyme scheme is tight at times, other times it's rather loose. Your punchlines, you do have some dope ones all throughout, in which I'm going to shout out a bunch of them, but yet all throughout, not as potent. Your delivery is much better, but there are still strides to take, especially when it comes to your confidence. Like, you are confident in what you're saying, but yet you're not overtly uber confident like what I'm saying is the greatest ever, and no one can tell me otherwise. But the key thing that I take from this entire project is the fact that you will get there. Like, your core fundamentals are too strong right now for you not to be able to get there, as long as you continue to grind and continue to try new things, man. Continue to push the envelope. Don't just get satisfied with what you're doing and such, thinking that you're so great. You got to continue to push to become the greatest ever to do it. As long as you keep that mentality, man, you are eventually going to get there. Like, you've already come too far to not get there. But let's go ahead and break down these songs, man. Starting with that For You, where this is like the vast majority of the songs that you have on this project, where there's no overall concept to any of them. It's just you spitting. It's you showing off the fact that you've improved this much lyrically. So you definitely want to spit and show people all of this. And I'm not mad at that at all, man. But that same strength ultimately exposes a weakness in your whole skill set, and we're gonna get more on that later as well. But as this Not You song, you're ultimately just spitting here. And my favorite punchline on this track was one that you just slid in there, man, like one of those that you just slide in and hope that people catches eventually. When you said my team is just bench warmers and we just don't play, like, that was cool because how you played on those words there, on how what a bench warmer is. For everybody who don't know, is just somebody that you got signed to your team that never get into the game. They're really just there just in case if you need them, but for the most part, if there's no injuries, they never go in. But yet when you saying you don't play, you mean it in the means of I'm the wrong one to try because I will come at you. Like, that was a good play on words right there. But the bar that you use here that is most significant to your whole rhyme scheme to explain exactly the direction in which you're going with your rhymes is when you said that you try to leg lock chicks so you can get a leg shaking like maracas. Like, that was pretty solid because, point blank false, how many rappers out there in the commercial industry right now do you believe can rhyme with maracas? Especially in the commercial game, man. There's not very many. But yet that just shows you the direction that you're taking lyrically, where you're putting more of an emphasis on your vocabulary in order to create your punchlines here. And you see that in a bunch of MCs from, say, J Electronica to Nas, in which you can obviously tell that you are inspired by these individuals, especially Nas, but we're going to touch on that a little later too. The next song, Pause. this is you again spitting here, but you started off super strong on this, man. Talking about how you had dreams of people talking about your accomplishments, building your monuments, but yet you're a naturally born leader but never could build a following. Like, that was solid just because it's real talk. And that's just a struggle that a lot of people have, man. Like, you ultimately want to find success so bad and all of that, but yet you really just don't know how to start, how to go ahead and build people who follows you and all of that. Key thing about that, man, it just starts with a conversation. Talking to people that you know would like your music, figure out exactly how to speak to them in order to get them to check out your stuff. But my favorite punchline off of this song would be, okay, I got time to spare, so go ahead, take this minute of fame. Like, that was very slick that you threw in there as well. I like the little slick punchlines that you put in that people usually won't catch. Like, I really enjoy those. The next song is that Strictly for the Meeps, in which this was rather interesting because what you're doing is having your comedy style that you like to have, and that's kind of bleeding into your music here. Well, especially with that hook, you can just tell that you just wilding out with it, man. And that's cool because you got to use what you got. And the more you do that, the more you'll find your own individual lane that very few people can follow. And this is something that I've said for quite some time, man. That comedy rap is untapped potential because all of these people out here who's doing it, they just doing it so they can be somewhat funny, but yet they're not funny because they don't have the skills to be able to pull it off. But yet, if somebody who has a quality rap skill, who's actually able to be funny and create dope songs, that person can see a lot of potential, dude. The next song is Stay With Me, and this is one of the few songs that you got a basic concept that you're ultimately talking about, and this is where the flaws in your skills come out and such because you're obviously not that comfortable with this. Starting with the fact that you're using a frequently used sample on this one, man, and you know, you self-produced this entire project in which you did a whole bunch of samples of 90s music and threw your own 90s type drums on top of it, but yet you had it in your own type of fashion, which that's kind of cool. But here's the thing, if you're going to use commonly used samples, they're going to come off as instrumentals, and instrumentals are just beats that everyone has used 1,000 times, and if you're going to use an instrumental, you have to stand out and be different because thousands of people have done it and done it their own different direction, and some people may have done it to a higher level than you ever will, and honestly, it makes you kind of blend in and not stand out, and that's what you want to avoid. But on this song, you're ultimately talking about the struggle that you have trying to be a rapper and such, on how you're trying to stay out of the streets and deal with all the hate that comes your way. And the key problem with this is you are a rapper that's rapping about rapping. Do you understand the problem that that comes with, dude? Because quite frankly, how many rappers are actually fans of other underground rappers? I see rappers be fans of the most notable rappers out there, the people who are already big time like Kendrick Lamar, J. Cole and all that, but yet they honestly wasn't their fans from the beginning. Like, their core fans were people who didn't rap, so you honestly do not want to try to rap towards them in order to get them as your core fundamental fan base as you're trying to come up. And to be honest with you, man, this world is way too vast. There's way too many things to rap about than to rap about rapping, man. The next song is Shepherd's Pie, where you're again spitting, but yet the concept pretty much is just in the hook. Well, what you're talking about is shepherd pie, with your name being Tim Shepard now. You're ultimately talking about, okay, this is your pie, your success, your money, everything that you built, and how people want to come in and try to take some of that, whether it's the record labels, whether it's the people who's trying to compete with you, whether it's the chicks or whatever trying to come up and get with you. My favorite punchline off of this, man, one of my favorite punchlines off this entire project actually was when you saying, okay, you better not mention my name unless you got a hashtag next to it. That was solid because you're ultimately just saying, don't put my name in your mouth unless you're promoting me on Twitter or something. The next song is Hercules, in which I feel as though this was easily the best song on this entire project, even though it does have a bit of a feel of being incomplete because you didn't have a hook, but yet in the end, not all songs have to have a hook, and seeing as though you did put forth an effort to put hooks on most of the joints, I can let it slide as that moment where you're just talking in it. It works with this track. The production is vastly the best that you had on this entire thing, and then you spitting with another great punchline that I felt as though was a top punchline on this, when you're saying that you're working harder than these skinny chicks out here trying to twerk. That was phenomenal. The next song is The Wake Up Call, where this had a bit of a concept on it as well, but another joint that you used a commonly used sample on, where you're rapping about black consciousness and the struggle in which we have to live in, and then you definitely go deeper in that a little later. But you had a solid punchline on this as well, where you said that My Nightmare would have woken Martin out of his dream. That was cool. But the next song, Heisman, is where you really going in on the socially conscious message and all of that, man. Where on this one, you're talking about the images in which we are, as black people, promoted, especially all over the world, but especially here in America. Basically, how we're portrayed as violent criminals and all of that. And you're ultimately saying with the whole Heisman, which is a trophy that you win out of college football and such, you're saying that black people have taken that and ran with it. Like how most people run away from their families and all of that. On how we as black people take the hate and run with it as well, but you sum it all up pretty much saying that we learned all of this from America in general and such, and you're absolutely right about it. Like, that's what they actually bred black people to be like, and that's why they constantly promote this in order to make money and to create all of these laws to come out and oppress us in general. The next song is The Mind of the State BX, in which this is you on the Nas instrumental where you're trying to go ahead and make your own rendition of it, and this is why I said specifically that Nas definitely inspires you based off of the whole rhyme scheme that you have, based on the way that you rap, based off your whole punchlines and stuff, where you're focusing directly on to your wordplay and focusing so hard on your vocab. That is exactly what Nas has done from the beginning of his career, man, and he propelled himself to the highest levels by doing that. That is a great inspiration to have, but understand you set the bar really high there. Like, you really don't want to be directly comparison to him and such, because he's a legend and nobody's ever going to say that an individual that's alive is as good as a legend these days, point blank period, without giving that person a lot of hate. And in your core fundamentals, you definitely have a lot of work to do, man, to just get to the core basic level that Nas was at the beginning of his career, not so much when he started growing to like Stillmatic and all of that. But in this track, you definitely had some solid bars as well, man. Well, my favorite one was when you saying that police will do you like Steve Irwin and such because you can die from the sting. That was deep. Then you ended all with the outro, man. Well, on this one, you're pretty much reflecting on how you got into where you're at, where you starting saying that, okay, I see a lot of these women out here choosing and all that when they really wasn't choosing to begin with. But then you put a good focus on the friends that you once had that wouldn't lift a finger in order to help you to get to where you're at now. And I'm glad you understand and see all of this for what it is, man, because point blank, if you got one friend that's going to ride with you, man, with the type of music that you trying to do to help promote you when they ain't trying to promote their own stuff, then you honestly got a true friend there, but you only will get one of those in life pretty much. Whether you succeed or fail, my brother, it's all going to come down to you and how you go ahead and go about this, man, as this project is solid enough for you to be out there promoting like crazy, man, going out there trying to build up your name. But as I said, you still have a lot of improvement to go, man, to become the quality act that I know you can become. Solid nonetheless, man. One I recommend everybody out there to go ahead and peep out. The link to it is in the description below. I hope you enjoyed the show. You can follow me at Twitter up there, and you can go to downloadpass.com, that's down there, to read today's article.